Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. The draft preview series continues. Three more intriguing prospects for the Wolves at 17. I will rank the three against each other and tell you who are the three I like for Minnesota at 17. It's all coming up. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Thursday, everybody. Our draft preview series rolls on. I've done 5 players so far. We're going to do 3 more today. A little bit of everything. We got essentially a big guard. We've got a wing. We've got a really kind of more of a forward today. So not sticking to one position, and I'll rank those 3 against each other today. I'm pretty excited about what we're going to get into as we continue the draft preview series. No additional Kevin Durant news. The Kevin Durant watch continues as we're now within a week of the first round of the NBA draft. A big thank you here off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see there the guys we're going to talk about today on the side of your screen. I want to start with, and this is in no particular order, I'll rank them in the third segment, who I would take among these 3. The full big board's coming early next week. Today, we're going to talk about Liam McNeeley out of UConn. We're going to talk about Drake Powell from North Carolina and Egor Demin out of BYU. So 3 pretty interesting prospects. If you missed it, yesterday, we covered Asa Newell from Georgia, Thomas Sorber from Georgetown, and Maxime Reynaud from Stanford. And then on the first day on the Tuesday, I guess, Neat Clifford and Jace Richardson. So we've now done, after today, we'll have gotten through 8 guys. And again, by the time the draft happens next week, I'm going to get close to 15 guys. We'll rank them. I'll talk about who I like at 17 and who I like at 31 for Minnesota. Last year, by the way, when I did this, I did not do Rob Dillingham because I don't think anyone saw the Wolves draft traded up into the top 10, but I did talk about TJ Shannon leading up to the draft because I thought he was an option for Minnesota with their later pick. And sure enough, they did pick him. So I feel like the guys we're going to cover are all, there's a pretty good shot the Wolves take somebody at 17 or 31 that's on this list we're talking about here over the next few days. All right, so let's start today with Liam McNeeley. Liam McNeeley is he's known as a shooter, which is a bit problematic given what he actually shot from 3, but we'll talk more about that, and I'll talk about why I think the true answer is somewhere in between him being like a sharpshooter and him being a guy that only shot 31+% from 3. He's a 6'7" wing with a wingspan of about 6'8.5". By the way, I round up on height. You see the height without shoes. Usually the listed height is going to be like 1.5 inches more than that. I kind of split the difference. So I think without shoes, Liam McNeeley was like 6'5.5". I rounded it, 6'6.5". I rounded up to 6'7", 6'8.5" wingspan. There's a ton of upside for him as a shooter, but he did only shoot 31.7% on 3s. He was a big-time prospect coming out of high school. I think he was a 5-star recruit, and people thought he would be an easy lottery pick this year, and it's possible somebody still sees that. It's the size combined with he's a pretty good passer and looks the part as a shooter. He just didn't execute consistently to the level that you'd want a lottery pick to execute, somebody who was a 5-star recruit and now a one-and-done player out of UConn. So obviously he's younger. He's 19. I don't think he looks comfortable as a movement shooter. He's really good as a catch-and-shoot guy, and the form is nearly flawless. It's actually about perfect in terms of, occasionally a little off balance, but that's nitpicking. Like, as a catch-and-shoot spot-up guy, he looks fantastic. He was actually 43.1% at UConn as a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter when he had space, like an open catch-and-shoot opportunity. He was north of 43%. That's really good. But overall, he was 31.7% on 3s. He doesn't look comfortable moving off his screens. He certainly doesn't look comfortable off the dribble. He doesn't look comfortable in the mid-range off the dribble either. Like, there needs to be some more development there. He needs to learn how to come off of screens and catch and release so that the comfort level is somewhere near where he is just a straight catch and shoot opportunity as a spot-up guy. So if you're going to draft Liam McNeeley, you got to believe that you can project out that 43% on open catch and shoots you can sniff that as a movement shooter. Clearly there's upside there. The range certainly looks like it's unlimited. I mean, he bombed, it was bombs away for him from NBA range pretty consistently for McNeeley at UConn. Overall, he shot a little over 5 per game. Yeah, almost 5.5 threes per game. And the average distance on those was, it was out there. Like he does have legit range, but he has to be able to hit relatively open threes off of any situation, or else what's the benefit to Liam McNeeley? He's a solid passer for a guy who's 6'7", but he's not a point guard, right? He's a big wing. I think he creates pretty well for others, and he can create for himself a little bit too. I just think he looks a little awkward when he turns the corner, gets into the paint. I think he's stiff is probably a good word. Stiff, awkward, however you want to say it, a little bit upright when he gets into the paint and kind of tries to pick apart a defense. I actually thought in pick and roll situations, he looked relatively comfortable as a ball handler there. And the points per possession, I think was a little over 1 point per possession, like a good number, or around 1 point per possession. It might've been slightly below. So as a secondary creator for himself and others, I actually think there is something there. It's not a sure thing. And clearly the shooting isn't quite a sure thing either. I think the floor is pretty good because of the open catch and shoot stuff, but I don't see a ceiling for him because he's a modest athlete and because all this other stuff is just okay. If you're drafting him to be fair, if you're drafting at 17, you're not often drafting an all-star there anyway. You're looking for a guy who's going to have a higher floor and be a consistent contributor. And I do think there's a little bit of upside here because if he does convert, on catch and shoot 3-point opportunities off the move, off the dribble, on the move, off of pin downs, etc. There's some projectability here as like a really nice role player, but I think right now, I think he'd struggle to crack an NBA rotation. I think he's got to improve some of that feel once he gets into the paint. And in the 3-point shooting, if you're going to be drafted as a guy who's supposed to be a shooter, like he's not like some of these other shooters, like a Corey Kispert or guys who have come out of UConn that were knocked down by the time they left UConn. That's not Liam McNeeley. He was sub 32% this year. So, the form is great, and I'm sure NBA shooting coaches and strength coaches will get into him in terms of building out that frame a little bit. Like there is some projectability there, but if you're the Wolves, that's not what you want out of this pick. I don't think he actually reminded me of, no, I don't know. I think he is a pretty good fit in the mid-first round. I just don't think he's a great fit for Minnesota. I think he's fine as a prospect. I'm just not super excited because I think that the playmaking is not as good as it should be. The stiffness is a concern, and the shooting percentage, if you're not going to be dynamic in other areas, needs to be a little bit better. Defensively, he's just fine. Activity level, motor, fine. Size is really good. Obviously, he's not an outstanding athlete, and he wasn't a lockdown defender. I think the effort level is positive, and that's a good thing. I don't think he's going to be somebody teams can go after necessarily, but he's not a dynamic defender either. Good in transition, again, because of the size, the passing ability. I think the overall touch, which he obviously has when he can shoot threes with the range that he possesses. He was nearly an 87% free throw shooter on almost 5 attempts per game. So clearly there's a lot to build out there in terms of shooting. If I'm the Wolves, I'm not taking that bet at number 17. And he may be gone by then. I think it's more likely he's still on the board and somebody picks him at around plus or minus the 20 range. He's mocked anywhere from the late lottery to, like the very end of the first round. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle there. I don't love him as a Wolves selection, although I think there is a world in which he can crack an NBA starting lineup. I think he's more likely a fringy rotation guy for the first couple years in the league. You just got to hope that shot develops and that the passing continues to develop as well. So that's Liam McNeeley out of UConn. Next, I want to talk about Drake Powell out of North Carolina. And I'm excited to talk about Powell. I like his fit with Minnesota. We'll break him down here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at OLIPOP. I have my OLIPOP here next to me. I'm going to crack it open in just a second. I had to have it here in my insulated koozie deal so that I had it next to me and cold when specifically for this read, because I was super pumped to crack it in the middle of the podcast. OLIPOP is a new kind of soda. It's made for people who love the classic taste of soda, but want something that supports their health with just 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can. OLIPOP is reimagining soda in a way that's better for your gut. Traditional sodas are loaded with sugar, like 39 grams in a regular Coke or 44 grams in an orange Fanta. OLIPOP flips that script with just a fraction of the sugar, no artificial sweeteners, and gut-friendly ingredients like OliSmart, a blend shown to support digestive and overall health. It's soda that tastes like the real thing, but actually does something good for your body. And I promise you, it is delicious. I'm going to crack this crisp, cold grape. Right now, classic grape it's legit my favorite soda. It is fantastic. Easily my favorite OLIPOP flavor. My favorite soda right now, period. It's delicious, and it makes me like, it supports gut health. You don't find that anywhere else in soda. Classic grape's my favorite. I tried, we did a crisp apple yesterday, also very good. You can get a free can of OLIPOP right now by just buying any two cans in the store, and they will reimburse you for one. Head to drinkolipop.com/lockdownnba to claim your free can. Hopefully you get classic grape, your free can, and find OLIPOP near you. That's drinkolipop.com/lockdownnba. All right. Let's talk about Drake Powell. Drake Powell's another guy who was a big-time recruit out of high school, as a lot of these one-and-done guys are generally are that. I think Drake Powell is a really intriguing fit for Minnesota. He's a wing. He's 6'6", 7-foot wingspan. So really solid wingspan. That's the thing. You know, obviously, I'm a big fan of guys that have a massive wingspan, and we talked yesterday about Thomas Sorber at the center position. I think he's a great fit for Minnesota. And that's one of the positives there. Drake Powell, 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan and an extremely high motor. You combine a high motor with that length and overall good size, like he's going to smother two guards at the NBA level. He's going to guard threes, and I think he can guard some fours. Combine the high motor with length, that's a really big deal. He's a really, really good point of attack defender. He's switchable given the size and length. Size to guard up to the 4, I really do believe that. And we'll talk about the offense here in a second. He's absolutely plug and play on the defensive end of the floor. In some ways, he's like a slightly bigger Jalen Clark. And now he's not quite as good point of attack. He's a little obviously bigger than Jalen Clark. He's not guarding primary ball handlers all the time, but he was guarding high usage opponents, primary scoring options for opponents throughout the year for North Carolina. And as a big time recruit, he didn't have a big role offensively, yet he still played hard and had a high motor. So this is a guy that you know is going to play the role that you put him in. So if Minnesota drafts him in the first round and he's TJ Shannon this year, and what by that I mean like the 10th guy who's sometimes in the rotation, sometimes not. He gets a couple of spot starts due to injury, shorthandedness, whatever, but he kind of languishes. I mean, TJ Shannon last year was a better college player than Drake Powell. He fell in the draft for primarily off-court reasons, and TJ Shannon seemed to handle it okay. Drake Powell will handle it great as well, because of his relatively modest offensive role in North Carolina. But again, plug and play on the defensive end of the floor. I actually think from a defensive upside, I think he could be every bit as good as Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's a bit. I think the frame is a bit more projectable in terms of strength and size and width. And again, bigger than Jalen Clark in terms of height and length and the whole thing. I don't know that. He's not Nickeil Alexander-Walker, to be clear. I mean, Nickeil was the backup point guard last year, and he's not a point guard. Like that's not what Drake Powell's not doing anything next level in terms of, well, not that Nickeil does either. He's not a point guard. Let's just say it that way. Neither is Nickeil, but like Nickeil can play one on TV and Drake Powell is not there. So I'm not at all saying he is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I'm just saying if he were to fill in for that role this year, they find the backup point guard role from somebody else, whether it is they cobble it together as they've done with guys they have, or it's just more Ant initiating, or Conley was the second unit and they're starting Dillingham, or it is Dillingham or whatever. Drake Powell's not a point guard, but defensively, I think he could fill in capably for what Nickeil Alexander-Walker's done the last couple of years, which is basically your second line of defense as a point of attack defender. If Jaden McDaniels is in foul trouble and you need a bigger wing defender, that's not Jalen Clark. Jaden McDaniels is the guy, or excuse me, Drake Powell could be the guy you go to. I think he's that good defensively right away. On the offensive end of the floor, he like the points per game is nothing to write home about. Like you pull what he did, and he was like under 8 points per game. Yeah, he's 7.4 points per game. He was just a shade under 38% from three, 37.9% on a little more than 2.5 attempts per game, which is decent volume. If you look at the catch and shoot number, though, he was 40% on catch and shoot threes on 90 attempts, which is, not a massive volume. It's roughly what Dillingham had last year, and he was plus 40%. Or actually, he was like 50% catch and shoot at Kentucky. But 40% catch and shoot on 90 attempts, that's not nothing. And remember, this was a 5-star recruit who there's clearly offensive projectability here. So there's offensive talent, there's touch. He was really good in the paint, which is exciting. The release is slow on the three-pointer. It doesn't look like the release itself is going to necessarily suddenly be much faster, but certainly NBA coaches are going to have something to say about that. Like Nickeil Alexander-Walker was not a great three-point shooter when he was drafted either. I hate to keep going back to Nickeil, but effectively he would fill in that role in the rotation if they saw him, Drake Powell in a couple of years filling into the rotation. That's essentially what that role would be, as a bench wing. Can the three-point shot improve even more, just like Nickeil's did over the course of the last 3-4 years in the league? I think that's entirely possible. Again, the release is slow, a little bit clunky. It doesn't look super natural, but it goes in enough. And that's what his role would be offensively for Minnesota. I actually do think he's pretty good off the ball, too. I think he has good half-court activity. He's active. He's all over the place. He's a pretty good cutter. Seems to be, relatively high basketball IQ there. A lot of times the guys who have a high motor defensively and know what they're up to on that end of the floor, they've got a pretty high offensive IQ, too, and understand timing, spacing, cutting, where to be and when. And that stuff is super duper important. And to get it out of a guy who's a one and done is huge. I mean, that should apply to the NBA. It should translate very, very well. He's good in transition, actually really good in transition, very good athlete. Again, good size at 6'6", 7-foot wingspan. So good off the ball offensively, can play in the dunker, could be a spot up guy. Like I actually think he can play small ball 4 on offense just because he is so athletic and long. Like that's a thing you could do with him if you needed to. And very good in transition, like I said. Passing wise, again, not a point guard, but there was some good stuff. Again, I go back to the basketball IQ. Seems to make the next easy read. Like if the right read is, hey, I got this guy on my hip, but I can dump the pass off to the big who's got somebody sealed and he can get a dunk or a layup. He makes that read. He makes the next easy pass on the perimeter. He's not wowing you with his assists, and he's not thinking 2 steps ahead. Like some of the guys, like we're going to talk about Egor Demin next. He's obviously not anywhere near that, but he's not a point guard. He's just not. But he makes the right basketball play. And for a guy who's going to be a lower usage type guy, a catch and shoot 3-point guy, for him to have the feel to know where to be as an off-ball player, and then when the ball's in his hands to make the right choice, that's really, really important. I think also he's a pretty good screener, and there's upside for him as a roll man too. And again, can function as a big offensively, play in the dunker, roll to the basket. There's a lot of stuff like that I think is pretty interesting. And I see that as like the type of guy the Wolves need if they have, of course, the number one thing is they need somebody else that can create instead of Anthony Edwards. Is Julius Randle that guy? Is Rob Dillingham that guy? We've talked about this before. Is it Naz Reid? They need that regular second scorer. That's not Drake Powell, but you also need the glue guys, the Nickeils and the Jalen Clarks and the guys that can do these things off the ball. And I think Drake Powell is pretty plug and play as that type of a guy with some upside. I don't think he's got like star upside, but I think he's definitely got starter upside. I don't think there's any question about that. The skill set might be a little redundant with, albeit a smaller Jalen Clark. Maybe I think he's got more skill than Josh Minot. Obviously, Minot, neither of those guys are solidly in the rotation now, but just looking at other guys on the roster, if you want a low usage athlete with length, like Josh Minot is that guy. Now he's a lot bigger and really more of a 4 who can play the 3 than a 3 that can play the 4 like Drake Powell. But I love Drake Powell. I think he's a really intriguing prospect. And, he's also kind of all over the place on mock drafts. I think he usually tends to be mocked a little bit higher than 17. But if he's on the board at 17, I love him as a pick for Minnesota and would be ecstatic if Minnesota got him. I just think he could, depending on what you need, like he's a different guy than TJ Shannon, right? So if you're looking for a ninth guy in the rotation, is it TJ Shannon? Is it Rob Dillingham? Is it Drake Powell? They're all different players. What are you looking for on any particular night? And if Nikhil's gone, you might need two of the three of them to be in the rotation. If you're paring back Mike Conley's minutes dramatically, you might need all three of them. And Drake Powell, I think, could be in the conversation for some of those minutes alongside a Jalen Clark, alongside a TJ Shannon, alongside of Rob Dillingham, alongside of Josh Minot. I think he fits right into that group, could have a shot at cracking the rotation next year if he were to be on this team. Let's talk about Egor Demin out of BYU. We'll do that here next, and then we'll close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Game Time. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. There's nothing like the NBA finals. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere that you must experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get tickets, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total changer. Head over to the app now. Check out zone deals. I bet you can find some 10% off exclusive zone deals. Perhaps you want to get to Indianapolis. I guess Sunday would be today's Thursday. Tonight, perhaps you're in Indianapolis. You can get to Indianapolis for Game 6, or you want to go to OKC for a potential Game 7 on Sunday. Maybe you want to check out FIFA Club World Cup matchups if you're a soccer person, or the NFL schedule list is out. Look ahead to Vikings games in the fall, or you want to travel to see Vikings Bears in Chicago or Vikings Packers across the border in Green Bay. Plenty of NFL tickets you can find on there. Great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts. And with the Game Time guarantee, your tickets are 100% authentic. They will arrive on time, and you'll always get the best price with fees included. So what you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. Let's talk about Egor Demin. I think Egor Demin is one of the more intriguing guys in this draft. And obviously we'll get into why. I'm transparently maybe a little bit lower on him than I think some analysts are. And I guess that'll all be part of this, right? Egor Demin is a guard out of BYU. He's a one and done. He's from Russia and played overseas, played for Real Madrid high school or played professionally also for Real Madrid in Spain. And just played one season at BYU, was awesome in non-conference, but then once they got into conference play, was a bit less effective. He's 6'9", and he really is a point guard. That's what he plays. I don't think there's enough scoring and shooting for him to play off the ball. I think he's almost got to be, which is one of my knocks on him, is I worry about that developing. 6'9" with a 6'10" wingspan. I think it's pretty clear he's the best passer in the draft. And the skill is awesome when you watch it. There's plenty of great breakdowns of his passing on YouTube. And it's not quite like Ricky Rubio, for anybody that remembers when he was playing for the Spanish national team and playing professionally in Europe before he came over. Like, it's not quite that level of like generational passing, that type of ability, but it's nearly there. It's that good of a like, I can see the next 2 plays ahead, not just the next pass, maybe even 2.5 plays ahead. And the precision of the passing, the on time, on target, passes to shooter pockets, like, it's really, really good. Combined with his size and length, I can understand why teams would see that to be very tantalizing. Like, if this guy develops any sort of an offensive game of his own and can hold his own defensively, which I think he can, there is star potential here. So you want to talk about potential of the 3 guys we're talking about today. I do think the highest ceiling is Egor Demin. I do. Because the passing is so good and the size is very obviously real. I also think he's pretty good at getting to the rim on straight line drives. He's got long strides. Again, he's a big guy. He's 6'9" with long strides. Like Karl Anthony Towns was never the most athletic or the quickest first step, but he had long strides in addition to just being a big guy. Egor Demin has long strides. And he's really good if he has the angle. So if he gets a screener and he's ball handler out of the pick and roll, he can get to the basket himself in like 3 strides from the 3-point line, 2.5 strides, and score. However, he struggles when he doesn't get a ball screen. Against ball pressure, he turned the ball over at an absurd rate. It was like almost 30%. bad against ball pressure. That is my biggest concern for Egor Demin, because I do think some of the scoring stuff can develop, but if the handle's fine, it's a little bit weird for guys this good of a passer to not have an exquisite handle also. Like, you were never really worried about Ricky Rubio. I don't mean to keep comparing him to Ricky, but I think that's a comp for Minnesota fans that we're all a little bit familiar with. And he's a guy who's like, passing is his number one skill. And there's, of course, other guys, like you look at like an Elfrid Payton or guys like that have come out of college that have that same, that is their skill, and they've got to figure out the scoring stuff. There is some touch here. There's some shooting, and we'll get into that. And I know the numbers aren't great, but my biggest concern is how he handles the ball pressure and how he finds angles. I don't think he finds angles well. If he's given an angle off of a ball screen and can straight line drive to the basket and beat a defender, attack a high foot of somebody who's trying to recover and get in front of him, I think he can do that, and I think he can score that way. But in the NBA, you're going to have less guys who can take advantage of in the same way that you did at BYU. You're also not going to be able to get away with all the passes that he got away with in college. Well, many of them were impressive and on target, et cetera. The length and athleticism at the NBA level, he's going to have to adjust to that. And I think it's less of a big deal with his passing as it is with his scoring. My biggest concern is handling that ball pressure. He's a good athlete, actually a very good athlete, but he's not super strong. And of course he's young, he's only played 1 year at college. And so there's projectability there. And again, Ricky got stronger at the NBA level, right? Like, you can definitely get stronger and that could help you, but I don't think he's got a great handle. I don't think I think he gets a little panicky when he's pressured. And is he going to be able to handle doubles? Is he going to be able to handle ball pressure from like legit all world defenders? Like, you put Nikhil on him, is he going to be able to get a pass off? I know he's big. He's 6'9" with a 6'10" wingspan, but I have some concerns about that. And again, if he doesn't get a ball screen, he's not very creative when it comes to creating his own offense. He can't really create his own angle. And that concerns me a little bit as well. I think he's got to be great at one other thing besides passing. Is he a less physical, like Josh Giddey, who also doesn't, like, Giddey was a good rebounder, is a good rebounder. Egor Demin's not. Like, Egor Demin did not rebound the basketball very well. He was okay on the defensive glass for a guy who played guard, but he's 6'9" and he's a good athlete. Like, I think he's got to rebound a little bit better. Is he a no rebound, not as good defensively version of Kyle Anderson, slow-mo? Like, there's some similarities there. A very similar assist rate to slow-mo, very similar size to slow-mo. I think Kyle Anderson had a little bit more, certainly better defensively and certainly better on the glass. And Egor Demin is not doing that. Back to the shooting, he shot 27% from three in college on, let's see, how many attempts per game do we got here? On just under 5 attempts per game, 27%. The free throw percentage was just a shade under 70% as well. The free throw rate is not high because, again, he doesn't get to the rim that often. He's not strong, and he needs to learn how to use his body to protect the basketball and draw at the same time, draw contact, get to the free throw line, and finish at the rim. If you believe he's going to build out his body more and that there is a little bit more touch there on the shot, then yeah, he's not a bad pick at 17 because the ceiling is, I think, borderline all-star. However, I think the floor is lower than the other guys we talked about today. I think that, like Liam McNeeley, he's probably going to be a pretty good catch and shoot guy, and you could put him out there as your 9th, 10th guy, and he's going to do something for you. I think Egor Demin has a lower floor than that. I think there's a chance he doesn't adjust to the physicality of the NBA. He doesn't create more of an offensive game. He's a solid, not spectacular defender. If he doesn't develop another skill, and you think of all these guys, like we could go down a list. Like I mentioned Elfrid Payton earlier. There's a lot of these pass first guys who are just incredible passers at college that didn't develop enough other offensive skills. And there's some reason to believe he can. And is the passing special enough that it doesn't matter? I'm not saying he's Ben Simmons, right? Like, there's more offense there for Egor Demin. I'm not saying he's Markelle Fultz either. Like, I do think that there's something more there. I just don't know that I'd bet on him achieving it based on how he struggled with the conference play last year at BYU and the physicality of the Big 12. Like, the NBA is a whole other animal, obviously. So I like him. And actually, among the 3 guys we're talking about today, even though he's got a lower floor because of the higher ceiling and because the passing should be translatable right away, I think I see him as like a secondary creator on a second unit next year. Like, if the Wolves drafted him, could he play next to Rob Dillingham and give the size that you lose with Dillingham and those guys play next to each other? I mean, in theory, yes, probably not if you want to go to the finals, but like, I do think those skill sets could be in the backcourt together. An undersized shoot first guy like Dillingham, who can also pass, and a oversized, if you will, a good sized pass first guy who has some scoring to develop in Egor Demin. That's intriguing. Sure. So among the three guys we talk about today, I'd put Drake Powell first. I love his fit with Minnesota for all the reasons I cited last segment. Egor Demin would be two, because I think the ceiling is pretty high for him, higher than Powell and McNeeley, certainly than McNeeley, probably than Powell. And then Liam McNeeley third. I think there's a higher floor, but I still just like the fit with Minnesota for me is clunkier than I'd like it to be if the Wolves were to pick Liam McNeeley. So that's my rankings for today. Again, we've done 8 guys so far, and we'll do 3 more on Friday's show, probably 3 more Monday, and then a big board Tuesday, pending any other big NBA news. Of course, tonight we've got Game 6 of the NBA Finals, so enjoy that, and we'll get back to the draft on Friday's show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. You can watch on YouTube. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app, on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And of course, we are still daily throughout the months of June and July to cover the draft, free agency, trades, etc. All of the options the Wolves have upcoming in the next couple of weeks that they have on players and player options that are out there. So lots to talk about still. We really appreciate you sticking with us throughout the offseason. A reminder that for your second listen, you can go check out all the great Locked On NBA draft coverage. And right now we've got the NBA mock draft, the 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft. It's a 5-episode series with the most comprehensive NBA draft analysis that you can find, from NBA experts to college experts and NBA draft experts. Find the 2025 Locked On NBA mock draft on NBA Big Board and Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.